Hello everyone, I'm Dmitry with HardwareCanucks, and the GTX 1080 was all over the show floor Computex. I'm surprised that the only GTX 1070 we saw came from EVGA, despite everybody sort of advertising the 1070s now already. You can read our full review of the GTX 1070 down below, the Founders Edition. It'll be linked in the description. But now let's talk about the GTX 1080s that we saw and their sort of respective positioning within this entire pool. Huge thanks to our Computex sponsors for sending us out here. Shout out to NVIDIA, Fantex, NCIX, and MSI. So the first set of cards we got to see were from EVGA. I don't know about you guys, but I love the look of the new white shroud with these honeycomb pieces around the fans. It is featuring the new ACX 3.0 cooler, which is awesome, but I really dislike the top plate with all the text that'll be visible when the card is installed inside your case. I think it's a little bit too much. Now EVGA will be releasing 6 versions of the GTX 1080 in order of price. So we have the standard GTX 1080 with EVGA's reference cooler, then the 1080 with the ACX 3.0 shroud, then the superclocked card, the FTW edition, the hybrid, and then the classified. And they are priced from $609 to $619 to $649 to $679 respectively, and not yet revealed for the pricing for the hybrid nor the classified. And aside from the cooler difference, we have higher boost clock speeds on the SC to 1847 MHz, and then only a mere 13 MHz increase on the FTW edition, but now with a full RGB accents on the shroud and a higher power envelope with dual 8 pins for power versus a single 8 pins on all of the lower cards. The hybrid GPU is basically the FTW edition but with a different cooler, with the advantage of being cooler and quieter at load versus the standard ACX 3.0 design. I think the FTW edition will be the most popular card when it comes to the RGB implementation, simply because I think it looks the best out of all the 1080 cards. I love the hybrid version as well, they performed well, but an all-in-one card is also offered by Corsair. So the GPU itself is provided by MSI, while Corsair installs their H55 cooler on the GPU bracket branded as the Hydro GFX. Looks-wise, it's a more subdued design, which is maybe what you're looking for, and MSI will sell an identical card under the Seahawk line with the max boost clock of 1867 under the OC mode. It is very strange to see only a single 8-pin for power here, considering how much you can push the core when it's underwater, especially with EVGA giving us 2 8-pins, and this might indicate a different target audience for Corsair and MSI, who potentially not want to push the card to its full limits like you would with the EVGA card, but perhaps more focus on silence and cooling. Now we saw plenty of cards from MSI as well, so their Gaming Z and X that features the twin Frozen Shroud, which is probably one of the most popular ones. The distinct red and black color scheme is certainly the staple for MSI while offering RGB lighting. It's a little bit of a weird color combination, especially with the large MSI text and the dragon on the backplate on the Gaming Z card. The Gaming X will just have a plain backplate. The Gaming X boost clocks reaches up to 1847 MHz, while the Gaming Z is supposed to provide an even higher overclock, which is right now unknown. Both cards require an 8+6 pin for power and a dual slot design, but with very high PCB. So now let's talk about ASUS Strix with their Direct CU3 cooler. It is $679. It's very large, it's angular, it's very different from all the other brands. We have RGB lighting on the LED strips on the shroud and the ROG logo on the backplate, which will all link to the Aura lighting on their boards for this nice cohesion. But the most impressive part about the Strix are the boost clocks, which are the highest in this round, up to 1936 MHz, so almost 2 GHz here. Now having such high boost clock here is awesome because every board partner has to go through the NVIDIA Greenlight program, which means ASUS overclocks the card or any other vendor. They send it back to NVIDIA for approval so that NVIDIA can say, yes, this is the correct boost clocks for that card, so to avoid any misleading clock speeds. So the Strix will require 6+8 pin for power. There are 2 4-pin fan headers on the card itself, and you can dedicate a few fans to cooling the GPU based on the core temperatures, and it's awesome. And this is the first card from our list to feature dual HDMI and dual DisplayPort for VR, since HTC Vive and Oculus require an HDMI, plus you can also have an HDMI display without compromising on any of the connectivity. Moving on, we have the Zotac Amp next with 2 fans on the shroud. I really love how the shroud beautifully wraps around the back of the card, and the backplate is looking fine if you decide to go with that yellow theme, and that's gonna look awesome. The Zotac text on top is RGB, the same goes for the two angular strips between the fans. The boost clock here is 1822. It's a little bit lower than all the other cards, but it will require dual 8-pin for power that might indicate more headroom to increase your power envelope and further overclock. But a higher end Zotac card is the Amp Extreme, which is a gigantic card with triple fans. It's 2.5 slots with dual 8-pin for power, just as the Amp. The fans here are cool because there's a secondary set of blades in the middle that keeps more air by the heatsink. Now, I'm really not a fan of the backplate design, especially with the RGB push the limit text. That's definitely over the top. You know, what if I don't want to push the limit? Come on. Unfortunately, still, we have no information on price or the boost clock speeds for the Amp Extreme. Perhaps it's because of the Greenlight program. They're probably going through the processing still. And the last card on our list is the Extreme Gaming by Gigabyte. So we have this cool overlapping fan design that shrinks the card size length, which is awesome, but it extends it, so it's a 2.5 slot card because of those thicker fans. There are two HDMI ports out of the back for VR applications, full RGB shroud that I think is a little over the top with the size of the text. We have dual 8-pin for power, and unfortunately, not sure why, boost clocks for the Extreme Gaming are unknown yet. And so that concludes our GTX 1080 roundup based on all the cards that we saw at Computex. There were still a few that we did not get a chance to see, but we will sure change that, hopefully with full reviews coming up. Make sure to subscribe. And what was your favorite card based on our list here today? Leave them in the comments down below. I'll leave all the links to reviews and everything like that I'll be publishing later on the 1070s and the 1080s. I'm